Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Let's Dev, where today we're messing with GameMaker surfaces to try something a little crazy. Now, I've used surfaces before. With the first Let's Dev holiday special, Boxed by Christmas, I used surfaces to create the darkness/lighting effect, which itself was inspired by the likes of Nuclear Throne and Zelda. So I'm not entirely new to surfaces, however, I'm also far from familiar with them. Today, the goal is to hopefully learn a little bit more about them while also doing something really cool in the process. The plan is to utilize surfaces to punch a hole through a stack of tile maps. This will allow us to hopefully create an X-ray or interdimensional rift type of effect. And hopefully at the end of it all, we'll have learned a new thing or two about GameMaker's features. Sounds like a plan, so let's not waste any more time and get to the coding. First up, we needed a couple tile layers. I'm going with just 2 to keep things as simple as possible. Then, in the HUD object, I created arrays to hold the necessary layer and tile map data for future use. And of course, drew basic colored tiles throughout the room, layer 1 being green tiles and layer 2 being blue tiles. A quick test showed that our tiles were being drawn, so a variable to keep track of the current layer was added, and a spacebar check would toggle between said layers. And to make sure that this would work, the 2 tile map layers were then hidden. Another test showed that the player was in pitch black, which meant so far nothing was broken. Well, hopefully. Back to the code, an object dedicated to today's effect was then created. In the drawn event for the object, I had the tile map of the current layer drawn in the room. One more quick test showed this to be working. Spacebar would toggle between layers 1 and 2, and the overlay object would display the corresponding tile map data, which again was green for layer 1 and blue for layer 2. So with our tiles drawing properly, it was now time for the main event, the addition of a surface. In the overlay code, I decided to do something familiar and recreate the darkness effect from Boxed by Christmas. Nothing fancy here, just a black rectangle drawn over, with a white circle punched out that followed the player, which itself is sporting that great Steve sprite we haven't seen since the first 2D Minecraft attempt. And this worked out just fine. Now I just have to figure out how to display tile map data instead of darkness. So, Occam's razor, the logical thing seemed to be draw the tile map to the surface instead of a black rectangle, which surprisingly actually worked exactly as hoped. Drawing the inverse of the current layer in the surface created that exact effect we were going for. So, since things were going alarmingly smooth, I took some time to make the circle effect a little fancy. Using some basic math, I had the circle ease in and out to give it some nice visual flavor. I mean, just look at that. It's like the umami of circles growing and shrinking in size. And based on the FPS counter, this effect wasn't as taxing as I thought it'd be. While not my ideal average FPS, I expected a lot worse given how little I know about utilizing surfaces. Anyway, moving on, I wanted to see how the drawn maps dealt with real-time changes. So new tiles were added to each map, a red cross for layer 1 and a yellow cross for layer 2. Then I added a left-click check to the overlay, which would replace the existing full blank tile with one of the new cross tiles. The effect was trippy, and not at all what I was expecting. It seems that the drawn tiles are not updated like they are using the tile map set function, and I think because the room was set to refresh the display buffer, the colors started going wild. However, despite the weirdness with the tile behavior, the effect worked and the effects were awesomely weird at the very least. So since tiles wouldn't work, I wanted to see what objects would do. I created a big old red block, gave it a layer variable, and turned the object visibility off. And first weird thing, adding the object to the room itself broke the entire surface effect. I'm not sure if it's due to a depth issue or just a glitch in GameMaker, but it was a thing. The only way I could get the blocks into the room was to spawn them in via code. So with the objects now in the world, I returned to the overlay code. And in the overlay code, a conditional would determine whether or not the red block would be drawn. This kind of worked, but since the surface only drew the tile map, the object would be missing with the effect enabled. So I added the same conditional to the surface code as well, basically drawing the same thing twice. And though I didn't like having to draw everything twice, the effect worked. Depending on its value, the red blocks only appeared in their own layers, creating this cool visual rift. It really added to that cool X-ray/interdimensional rift effect that we were hoping for. But as cool as it was, I wasn't done. To get even crazier with it, I decided to randomize whether a tile was drawn in their respective tile map. And the results were something even crazier. an absolute mindbender. There were holes everywhere, and colors would be brought in and out of existence via this circle following the player. On one hand, this is a really cool visual, and it's a great example of how useful and unique surfaces can be for a game. However, I'm sure that this can be done via a shader or a more optimized method. And there's also the issue of updating tiles and object behavior itself, for example collisions. There's clearly a lot I've yet to learn, and to be honest, I'm not even sure what practical use this effect could have in a game, especially if interactivity is so limited. But maybe this will inspire one of you to pick it up from here. Maybe that top-down 2D Minecraft isn't so impossible after all. As for myself, I can't say I learned too much more about surfaces from this experiment, though I did learn a lot of things that don't work like I thought they would, so it wasn't a complete wash. Anyway, with that brings us to the end of this little experiment and this episode of Let's Dev. So leave a like if you enjoyed the episode, subscribe and turn on notifications if you haven't already, and leave your thoughts on this little surface experiment in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.